How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Weather Sunshine. That was today. It's September 18th, 2021, and today we're going to forecast what type of weather conditions we should expect for this fall season. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather calls, and make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather calls. So let's begin by taking a look at the current Enzo forecast for over the next couple months, and pretty much the fall season is about to begin where around September 18th. It begins on September 20th, so within only 2 days we're going to begin the fall season. So the fall season extends from September to December 21st, and you see over that time period we are most likely going to experience a La Nina. Overwhelming 70% chance we're going to experience a La Nina during the fall months, nearly peaking to 80% in the months of October as well as November. So at this point we should expect La Nina type conditions over the next couple months for this fall, and what that typically brings is colder than average conditions throughout a lot of the United States during at least the fall months. If we were to take a look at the current Nino 3.4 index right now, you see that the trend has been more downward when it comes to sea surface temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region, as now we're around 0.35 degrees Celsius below average in the Nino 3.4 region, which means that most likely we're going to experience a La Nina within the next couple months, especially if this downward trend continues, which is forecast to continue over the next several months, and that should make big changes when it comes to the conditions we'll experience for this fall in the United States. Taking a look at what typically happens during the fall during a La Nina, pretty much I put all the years where we experience a La Nina in a climatology data set, and it compared the temperatures of all these La Nina years to the long-term average, which extends from 1991 to 2020, and you see there's overwhelming evidence that La Nina brings a lot colder than average conditions throughout the northern United States during between the months of September and December, which are the fall months. And you see that the colder than average air is pretty much extends further southward as well into the southwest United States, and this extends to the southeast as well, and even the northeast. And as most of the United States during a La Nina experiences colder than average conditions for the most part, so that is something we certainly need to consider when making the fall forecast, because when all these La Nina years point to a general consensus that we experience below average temperatures for the most part for most in the United States, then we should certainly take it into large consideration, as in my opinion this is the biggest data point that points to a colder than average fall for the United States. However, there's more to uncover. We also need to take a look at the precipitation anomalies for the United States, and you see that another big consensus is that during the fall months, between the months of September and December during La Nina years, we typically see a lot drier than average conditions throughout the southeast, and this isn't very different, or it's not very far-fetched from what you typically experience from La Nina in the southern United States, where it's typically a lot drier than average, and this extends to the southern United States and even a little bit to the northern United States as well during the fall months, which is something we need to take into consideration as well. And for the West Coast, you see that the precipitation anomalies are higher along the West Coast. They have a bigger departure from average, but we typically see a lot more precipitation during a La Nina fall in the Pacific Northwest, and this includes the coast of Northern California, Oregon, as well as the state of Washington, and extends to Idaho and Montana as well. So we certainly should expect more moist than average conditions in the Pacific Northwest, despite the drought you guys are currently experiencing. Especially since we're experiencing a lot of rain in the Pacific Northwest for the first time in months for some of you guys. So we should begin to see the atmosphere moisten up, at least in the Pacific Northwest. And while the more moist than average conditions extend further southward into California, it isn't so much of a departure from average that I'm not sure if it'll be able to combat the drought that's going on in this region. But typically during a La Nina fall, we see more moist than average conditions in the Pacific Northwest. So we could certainly see a more moist than average year for California. But based off how the drought is going in that area, it's going to be hard for me to actually predict we're going to see more moist than average conditions, at least in California. But the Pacific Northwest is a different story, because typically during the La Nina, we typically see a lot more moist than average conditions. So despite the drought, I do expect things to moisten up in the Pacific Northwest. Now, taking a look at the snowfall patterns for La Nina years. So of course, during the fall months, we don't typically see a lot of snowfall for the most part in the United States, because typically the fall months, of course, are between months of September through December. And during the months of November and December, while there certainly is snow, it's far from the most snow you'll experience. It's far from the total snowfall you'll experience for the entire winter, because November and December are considered the beginning months of winter. Not really the technical term for winter, but in general, the winter-like conditions you'll experience in the United States. So this forecast, this snowfall pattern does need to take, you need to take the snowfall pattern with a grain of salt, because again, because the fall only extends to the early winter months. But you see that there's a large consensus that the northern United States typically experiences more snowfall than average during a La Nina year. And what that means is that the atmosphere would be colder with more snowfall on the ground. Since that shortwave radiation is being absorbed by the snow, a lot of that energy from the shortwave radiation is used to break down the snow into water molecules, or to melt the snow from pretty much trying to change it from a solid to a liquid. And that takes up energy from the atmosphere, that takes up energy from the shortwave radiation, and that cools down your area as a result when snow is melting, or when shortwave radiation hits the snow. As well as, of course, another thing that snow does is reflect a lot of that shortwave radiation back into the atmosphere, rather than the ground absorbing it. So typically when we see more snow on the ground, it brings colder than average. It brings colder conditions, and you see during a La Nina year, we typically see a lot more snow in the northern United States. So that could certainly make for a colder fall for a lot of you guys in the northern United States. And while there are areas such as the southwest United States, such as New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, as well as portions of the mid-Atlantic that experiences drier than average snowfall patterns for a La Nina, it isn't so much of a departure from average as, let's say, how much more snow you'll receive in the northern United States. So I don't think the snowfall deficit in these areas will be enough to combat the above average snowfall in the northern United States, to combat the colder than average conditions you should expect for the fall. Taking a look now at another thing that really helps us determine what type of conditions we'll see over the next several months or weeks is the Arctic oscillation. And pretty much, to make a long story short, a negative Arctic oscillation means that you typically experience colder than average conditions throughout the northern United States, while a positive Arctic oscillation means that you experience it warmer than average weather conditions throughout the United States. And you see pretty much since the start of mid-August, we've been in mostly a negative Arctic oscillation, but you see that over at least the past week, we've been in a positive, but it's expected to go back down to a negative. And a pattern I noticed with the Arctic oscillation is typically when we either go when we go into a negative phase or a positive phase, that typically lasts for months. And if we were to pretty much start where the negative Arctic oscillation begins, right around mid-August. If you were to start in mid-August, and the idea is that the Arctic oscillation lasts for around 1 to 3 months, we could experience an Arctic oscillation for the next 1 to 2 months, especially since we're expected to go down over the next couple weeks back into a negative Arctic oscillation. So that means that we could experience colder than average conditions to begin the fall. And while we might eventually rebound back to a positive Arctic oscillation, the fact that we're in a negative Arctic oscillation right now and it's only been around a month could show that we still have another 1 to 2 months to go, because typically an Arctic oscillation lasts around 2 to 3 months. So we could still experience those big jet stream dips that bring the colder air further southward throughout the United States and brings colder than average conditions for this fall. So as a result, I think this adds emphasis on bringing a colder than average fall for throughout at least the northern United States, and potentially drier for the southeast as a result of a La Nina. Taking a look at what typically happens during a positive and negative Arctic oscillation, you see that during a positive Arctic oscillation, the jet stream winds are a lot stronger, the trade winds are a lot stronger, and that traps the cold air northward and keeps it from diverting southward into the United States. However, during a negative Arctic oscillation, the opposite happens, where the jet stream winds are a lot weaker, and that allows the cold air to divert further southward into the United States, bringing colder than average conditions throughout for the most part. Another thing we need to take a look at is the CFS model, which is a climatology computer model that predicts the temperature anomalies, and you see that over the next several months, it's predicting a much warmer than average fall for a lot of the United States. However, I'll take it with a grain of salt, because when we compare this data to what typically happens during a La Nina, it's completely contradictory, because what typically happens during a La Nina is we see a lot cooler than average conditions throughout the northern United States, and if it were up to me, I'd forecast a colder than average fall for the northern United States, and potentially a warmer than average fall for the southern United States, because that's what typically La Ninas bring. And I'm not sure if this computer model is really forecasting, synthesizing the fact that we're in a La Nina. So I'd take it with a grain of salt, but it is forecasting a warmer than average winter for most of the United States. But I'd personally go with what has been verified over years of data, which states that typically during a La Nina fall, we experience colder than average conditions, and that's a growing consensus based off of the data we've been seeing over 50 plus years. So I'd say, despite what the CFS model is saying, I'd forecast a colder than average fall for the northern United States at the very least, and a warmer than average fall for the southern United States, thanks to a strong La Nina that's forecast. If you were to take a look at the precipitation anomaly, now this is where the CFS model is a little bit more correct, because you see that during the month of October, it's forecasting a drier than average fall for the eastern half of the United States, and this is very in line of what typically happens during the La Nina fall. And also taking a look at the Pacific Northwest, it's a lot more moist than average for this October, which again goes with what the La Nina states, and it's forecasting dry conditions to continue for the eastern half of the United States for quite a while, which does go in line with the La Nina. So in terms of precipitation forecast, I think it should be accurate that we will experience a drier than average fall for the southern United States, while more moist than average for the Pacific Northwest. Taking a look at now, another thing is the drought monitor, because this is definitely huge when forecasting what we should expect over the next couple months. And you see that this drought along the west coast has not gone away, and that's definitely something we need to take into consideration, because the thing is with droughts is that they take a long time. It doesn't go away overnight. They take a long time to go away, because when there's a drought, there's less moisture overall along the surface. So there's a lot less moisture the atmosphere could absorb for any sort of precipitation to occur. And there's just a dominating ridge just bringing strong sinking air to this region, and it doesn't go away, and it's very difficult to make it go away. So if this were to continue over the next couple months, we should expect not only a drier fall for the west coast, but a more warm fall, because of course when there's a drought, there is obviously isn't a lot of clouds to block that shortwave radiation from the sun, so that allows the shortwave radiation from the sun to be completely absorbed by the ground and warm up the west coast a lot quickly than if it weren't in a drought and there were clouds in the sky. While I do expect it to go away, at least in the Pacific Northwest, because typically a La Nina brings a lot of moisture to the Pacific Northwest. For the southwestern United States, you might continue to stay in a drought because during a La Nina, that Pacific jet moves too far up north for a lot of you guys to get the moisture further southward. So as a result, the drought, I think, should continue for the southwestern United States and the northwestern United States. While you might be out of a drought thanks to a La Nina, we can't rule out the fact that it could maybe stay dry over the next several months. Now taking a look at the sea surface temperature anomaly, which is another thing we also want to take into consideration. You see that for most of the Atlantic and even the Great Lakes, the sea surface temperatures are warmer than average, and that might help raise up the temperature just by a little bit along the coast to make the temperature overall warmer than average. However, I'm not sure, especially in the northern United States, it'll be able to negate or completely go against the fact that we're going to be in La Nina, and that typically brings colder conditions throughout the northern United States. So while the sea surface temperatures might raise up the temperatures above average around this area temporarily, I do expect the La Nina to eventually cool things down when it comes to sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic as well as the Great Lakes. Now taking a look at my overall fall forecast for 2021, I'm expecting to be cool and dry for the most part for the northeastern United States. This is as a result of, like I said, the La Nina that typically brings a deep jet stream dip, and typically during a La Nina we see drier than average conditions around the northeast, and along with the Arctic oscillation that could bring cooler than average conditions in the northern United States, I think a cool and dry fall for the northeastern United States should be expected. And you see that for most of the southern United States, I expect it to be very warm and dry. In the case of the southwestern United States, I expect it to be very warm, very dry. Not only because we're going to be in a La Nina that typically brings drier than average conditions in the southern United States, but it's also due to the fact that you guys are still in a very bad drought. So I expect that to continue over the next several months. And the southeastern United States, I expect it to be very warm and dry because that typically is what happens during a La Nina fall. And we won't see, and you guys also won't see at least a ton of storms moving through thanks to a La Nina. There could be that possibility of hurricanes, especially since, like I said, we're approaching a La Nina, so the hurricane season might spark up again over the next several weeks. So you can't rule that out, but overall I expect it to be very warm and very dry for the southeastern United States, and I expect it to be cold with some snow in the northern Midwest, as that typically is what a La Nina brings, along with the negative Arctic oscillation that should bring the cold air for southward, and cool and moist in the Pacific Northwest, bringing more moist conditions thanks to a Pacific jet moving through during a La Nina. So this is my fall forecast for 2021. And if you want an even more in-depth forecast, just comment your city or area down below, and I'll make sure to give you guys a more in-depth forecast. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for this video. I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. And I hope you guys have a good day.